Welcome everyone. So for today's training, just to get everyone the logistics of what we will be doing today, we'll do a quick check-in and introductions in the chat. We'll go over the ESIT DHH process. And as you can see on our agenda here, we have quite a lot of policies and procedures to go over and some practice time for these first 7 policies that we have. We may not be able to get to all of them today, but we are going to try to get to most of them, and whatever we don't finish today, we will do next week. So the purpose of today's training is to create shared understanding of the policies, procedures, and practices prior to the July 1st implementation of the new King County ESIT DHH process, and to continue building relationships within our ESIT DHH community. So before we move on to the next slide, why don't we do a quick intro in the chat check-in. Please state your name, your pronouns, the agency that you are coming from, and your role. And while everyone is doing that, we will move on to the next slide, the beginning of our training presentation. And for those of you who are just joining us, Liz put it in the chat. Please write your name, pronouns, agency you come from, and your role in the chat. So to get us started, this visual here is what we'll keep in mind throughout the training. This is the ESIT process from referral to transition. And next slide, please. I realized I skipped a step. I didn't introduce myself. I'm assuming that folks are joining our second training here after our first one. My name is Norma Lobo. I am the Early Support for Infants and Toddlers Policy and Language Access Lead at King County. And with me today, I have my ESIT team members, Liz and Wendy. So to start, we'll go over this first policy. I went over it more in depth at our last meeting last week. And this time, I'll have, if there are volunteers from this meeting to read each of these bullet points, go ahead and unmute yourself. I can't see anyone. Go ahead and unmute yourself and read the first bullet point for me, please.
This is Liz. I can read the first bullet point. So under holding timeliness and family choice, at every step in the process, full service agency is responsible for enrolling and serving deaf and hard of hearing children and families with timeliness.
Feel free to jump in there, make sure everyone's awake. Next bullet point.
This is Roxanne from Listen and Talk. The next bullet point is DHH FRCs coordinate scheduling of evaluations, assessments, and IFSP meetings in alignment with their agency's practices.
This is Olivia from Listen and Talk. The next one is DHH FRCs are responsible for ensuring that a family is informed and supporting their choice of a DHH agency.
This is Norma speaking again. I can go ahead and read the last one. As soon as the family chooses a DHH agency, the DHH FRC informs and includes the assigned DHH provider as a full team member who is co-responsible for engaging in all subsequent steps in the process with timeliness. Next slide, please.
Norma, we had a quick question before we go to the next slide. Will this PowerPoint be shared out with the group?
Yes, absolutely. Just like the last meeting, I will send the PowerPoint and the recording in a follow-up email. So keeping in mind that first policy, holding timeliness and family choice, we're wanting to move the family and child through the ESIT DHH process. So this yellow at the top here is when a family has not yet chosen a DHH agency, the full service agency's process for moving the DHH child forward. We want to inform the family and support their choices and alert DHH agencies of scheduled dates to be ready and move the child and family through the process without delays. These kiddos are first and foremost ESIT kiddos, so we want to move them through the ESIT process. The green arrow is our goal, what we want to get to. Once a DHH agency is chosen, the DHH provider is included in every step of the ESIT timeline as a full team member in each of these steps. Next slide, please. So we'll start with procedures for referrals. I see a question in the chat. When we change slides, can we allow for 10 to 15 seconds to review, read the slide before discussing it? Yes, absolutely. Was there a question about this slide?
I don't have a question, Norma. This is just new information. And so we're trying to process it as you're talking as well. And some of us are multiple processors when we're trying to learn. So if we could just slow down, like Anna's saying, and give us some time to process what you're saying and then read the visual as well, that will be helpful. Thank you.
Oh, gotcha. Absolutely. All right, so we'll move on to the next slide. And these two arrows, the yellow and the green, this is what we'll keep seeing throughout the process. When a family has not yet chosen a DHH agency, the yellow, and when a family has chosen a DHH agency, the green. So here, this is the procedures for referrals. A child is referred in one of these ways. An audiologist or a hospital refers, including audiology report and diagnosis, using early hearing detection, diagnosis, and intervention, or EDI, to the DMS or Within Reach, or using a referral form to Within Reach. Another way a child might be referred might be through a community provider who refers to Within Reach using the referral form. A third way, a child may have already been referred or served at a full service agency and has been identified as DHH. So these are some ways children might be referred.
This is Liz. I'm the person who's advancing the slides. I'll try to use my best judgment and advance more quickly if it's information I think you all know, like that, and more slowly if it's something that you'll need time to process.
And as Nichelle and Anna pointed out, at any point in time, if we're going too fast or if we're going too slow, please go ahead and speak up. Either unmute yourself or in the chat, let us know if you'd like me to slow down or speed things up. So continuing the procedures for referrals, Within Reach follows up by checking for referrals in the DMS or faxing and emailing referrals and audiology reports. If more than one full service agency is in a catchment area for a family, Within Reach typically contacts a family to choose a full service agency, and there's a max of 2 days for the family to choose or be assigned to a full service agency. Within Reach assigns in the DMS to the full service agency and emails the DHH FRC or point person and faxes the referral form and audiology report, including diagnosis. If audiology report wasn't received, they may follow up with the audiologist. And I believe we have our Within Reach partners here with us today. So if you're here, I can't see people. If you'd like to unmute and briefly describe how the proportional method is working when a family hasn't chosen a full service provider, we would love to hear from you.
Hey. Hi everyone, this is Jennifer. Hopefully you guys can hear me from Within Reach, and I can talk about the proportion method a little bit. So it was something that King County and us at Within Reach worked on back in December 2019. And the idea came about when families were having difficulty selecting the agency, when they had multiple options, as well as when we were not able to reach a family. So the goal was to have like each referral assigned to a EI agency within 3 days of receiving it. And the proportion method is based on each school district and an agency serves and how many family resource coordinators are available to serve in that area at that point in time.
Can we pause for a brief interpreter switch, please? And can interpreter Jackie be spotlit? Thank you.
Perfect. And Anna, I see your hand up.
Hi, yeah, my Zoom is running a little slow, so I'm not turning on my camera at the moment. It took me like 10 minutes to hit the mute button, so I don't know what's going on. With regards to referrals, we will get self-referrals from families in the community directly to our agency. And that is either deaf and hard of hearing community members or family seeking services that have not yet found out about ESIT services through their experience in their identification process. And so I'm wondering, thinking about when we as the DHH agency gets a self-referral from a family, we tend to give out a release of information to the family to contact the FRC to start the enrollment process into ESIT services. Do we have any notes in place of how we want to do that now with so many more agencies involved, or should we just kind of use an internal process at the DHH program? I just thought of this when this came up and you had that list of types of referrals. I thought, oh, there's another one. There is community self-referrals that we will get.
Thank you for raising this, Anna. I think that this is a great question, and we should add what to do to the directions. And for right now, until we get something else in writing, could we say that you'll share the information with Within Reach, or it's like a community referral to Within Reach, but we'll work on a smoother process. And if they've already chosen one of the 3 agencies, then that would be a chosen deaf or hard of hearing agency by direct referral. But we would still want them to hear about all the processes and be able to choose their full service provider. So I think until we get something else in writing, we may want to consider that a community referral.
Thank you so much.
So this is Liz. Next in the chat, we have a question from Sandy. If Within Reach does not choose the family, do they choose an agency? And Jennifer, you may have answered that. I was looking at the chat.
I'll start, and then maybe you can jump in, Jennifer.
Yes, go ahead.
So if they can't reach the family, they get back to them and let them know the choices. And if the family hasn't chosen within a few days, they get back to them and identify which one they've been referred to and go forward with the referral. Did I get that right, Jennifer?
Yes, that's correct.
Wendy, my question is, if Within Reach doesn't get a hold of the family at all within those 2 days, do they then just send it? Do they just choose the agency they're going to send it to? Or do they wait? So that's one question. Do they just, they've called the family, they've called them again, they haven't gotten a hold of them, 2 days have gone by, they then send it to a full service agency. And then if they call the family, they reach the family, then they wait 2 days for the family to contact them back. The family doesn't contact them back. What do they do in that case?
Yes, this is Jennifer. again.
Jennifer,
Yes, for Within Reach. Yes, I can answer that. So usually what happens is we'll try to contact the family consecutively, like within 24 hours of receiving the referral. And if we don't reach it in the first attempt, we'll try again the following business day. And after our second attempt the following business day, if we don't reach the family, then we would assign them using the proportion method on the third day. And submit the referral to the EI agency. Sometimes we might end up getting a family, like they might end up calling us back, like after we assigned them an agency when they didn't respond back to us. In those situations, we would go over the options with the family and let them know that we've assigned them one, but they can always change any time. And if they end up changing an agency, then we would switch up for them.
Okay, thank you.
This is Liz. Before we go on to Melinda, I just want to say a couple suggestions from Anna for our meeting. Please kindly remember to state your name when you are talking so we can track the conversation with interpreters. And please say out the acronym for interpreters. Those are really good suggestions. Thank you, Anna. So next we'll go on to Melinda, who's raising her hand.
Hi, Melinda here. My question is, sometimes there's follow-up for referrals. And so I was wondering who would King County be reaching out to? Would it be the DHH point person or the DHH FRC when it's FRC referral follow-up?
This is Norma speaking. By referral follow-up, do you mean follow-up from Within Reach or after Within Reach has connected a family to a full service agency?
After Within Reach has connected with a full service agency. This might be outdated for me, but I have received information that in the past, if there was referrals coming from the Department of Health in King County, would frequently do a follow-up. And so that was one of the questions when we were determining our structure of who a DHH point person and DHH FRC would be and how much involvement they would have. So I was wondering if there's follow-ups with referrals to an agency, would it be going directly to the DHH FRC or to the DHH point person for that organization? And let me know if I'm not clear, please. Sorry.
I'll try and respond to that. This is Wendy. I think that some larger organizations may have a DHH point person and DHH FRCs, maybe more than one. And some smaller organizations, the DHH point person might be the DHH FRC also. So I think it's really going to depend on the organization, but within Reach, we'll have a contact person at your organization that will carry it the next level until it's assigned to an DHH FRC. So that might be the DHH FRC or the DHH point person. Each agency is going to have to clarify who within Reach will be adding to their caseload, or adding that referral to that person.
Hi, this is Robin from Northwest Center. I'm not sure if this is what Melinda's referring to, but Department of Health does occasionally email me asking if I received a referral for a certain kiddo. At most a couple times a month, and it's not for all the children. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
Melinda here. Like
This is
that, yeah, it could be that, it could be anything. I think, yes, there are definitely going to be agencies that have DHH point persons and DHH FRCs either combined or one, but I think it would be helpful at the leadership level to make the determination who they would be their first stop to communicating with. So like to me, it would make sense. It would always be the DHH point person who would then follow up if there is an extension DHH FRC that they would be contacting, just so it's a clear streamline of communication. But that's just how my brain works. So that's why I was asking.
Thanks. These are great points.
This is Norma speaking. Later on in our presentation, we have the policy for DHH point person and DHH FRCs that outlines the responsibilities of both. But for this question around the partnership or connection within Reach, we have it listed as a responsibility of the ESIT DHH point person. And I think what Wendy was saying was some agencies, the DHH point person might also be the agency's DHH FRC. So some of those roles and responsibilities might overlap depending on the agency, but we have it outlined as the person who is tagged as the ESIT DHH point person. They're responsible for that relationship within Reach. Did that answer the question?
Melinda here. Yes, thank you.
This is Liz. A question in the chat. Is the diagnosis always clear at referral time?
This is Norma. That's a really good question, and I will lean on Wendy and others in this space to answer that. I see that Robin put in the chat, I would say yes for most all of them. Only DHH Plus Kids sometimes don't.
This is Wendy. By DHH Plus Kids, those are kids who are deaf or hard of hearing and are getting a referral, but have other delays or disabilities also. Not saying that the DHH kids would necessarily have delays or disabilities, but there's another reason that they might be getting services from ESIT. So lots of them will have diagnosis with, but not all will.
Thank you for all those questions. I'm the ESIT team and myself are all taking notes. So anything that we don't have an answer for today, we will follow up after we get a little bit more information. So moving into the procedure for intake, a DHH FRC calls the family to do initial intake. After that referral, and the referral has been assigned to a DHH FRC. The DHH FRC then provides an orientation to ESIT, or early support for infants and toddlers, and asks the family about availability for an assessment or an evaluation and schedules it. And then the DHH FRC also provides an orientation to DHH services within ESIT, including explaining that the family gets to choose from 3 DHH providers. They would share the next dates or times for a welcome session with all 3 DHH agencies, and would share the video link, flyer, other information around the 3 DHH agencies with the family. And at this point in time, they may also identify the family's concerns, priorities, and find out if there is a diagnosis.
This is Liz. Michelle raised her hand. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you, Liz. This is Michelle. I have 2 questions. My first question is, what is the process for the DHH FRC if the family, to Anna's point, has went through a community route and has already connected, say, with HSDC? And so, of course, Anna would then route them to their specified DHH FRC. What if they decline? What would the DHH FRC do if the family was not interested in hearing about family conversations or listen and talk? So that's one question. The second question is, can I hear a little bit more about why 3A is before 3B? Why the welcome session isn't happening before families make the decision? Instead, they choose and then there's a welcome session. So just unless I'm missing it.
This is Norma. Do the interpreters need to switch? We'll pause for a second. Okay. Yeah, so that's a great question, Michelle. That 3A, the family wouldn't be choosing at that point necessarily, or maybe they are coming to the DHH FRC with a choice in mind. But that bullet point, what it means is the DHH FRC explains to the family that they get to choose, that they have a choice between 3 DHH agencies. And then these 3 bullet points would be happening kind of simultaneously. The DHH FRC explains the family gets to choose from one of 3 DHH agencies and shares the welcome session with those 3 agencies participating, so that the family can get any answers to questions that they might have, learn about the programs directly from the DHH agencies, and would share the video link and other information about the agencies with the family at that time. And then the family chooses.
Thank you. This is Michelle. Thank you, Norma. That explains my question. I do think it could be a little bit more ironed out, just so that when we share this with our reps and FRCs, they understand that, but that helps me out. And then my other question just around if the family went the community route, and then for the DHH FRC, just thinking they may be stumped. If the family is saying, I've already chosen, I don't need a welcome session with them. I know that happens a lot. And how would they navigate that? What are the steps you would want them to take?
This is Norma. That's a great question. And I think a really great scenario for practice. In that case, the DHH FRCs would still want to give the family the information that the welcome session is there and it's scheduled, but of course not push it on the family. If the family, they already made their choice, they know what they want, they're not interested in the welcome session, then we would cancel that scheduled welcome session, and the family would enroll with the provider that they chose. But the DHH FRC, in that scenario where a family comes and says, I already have a DHH agency in mind, I don't want to attend this welcome session, they would just say, okay, we'll connect with that DHH agency. And then in that process overview that I shared at the beginning, we're in that green arrow where the DHH agency has been selected, and the DHH provider will be included as a full team member and move the family along the ESIT timeline. Oh, thank you, Liz. So we would be here in this green arrow, moving the family along the ESIT timeline with the chosen DHH agency.
This is Nichelle. Thanks, Norma. I just put a piece in there that I'm assuming you guys may want us to document. And are you tracking that indicator to ensure that all families were at least given the option, just from our processing standpoint? I'm assuming that that's where we'll get in this as well, that we may want to track that. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Norma again. So the welcome sessions, that is a pilot that we'll be doing. So we'll be doing a little bit more planning around that before they launch in July. But the idea is that they would be scheduled on a regular basis, so potentially scheduled weekly. And when there are families who are referred, who might want to attend the welcome session after it's been offered to them by the DHH FRC, then we keep that welcome session. The 3 DHH agencies attend, share information about their program, and answer questions for the family. And if the family says, no, thank you, I'm not interested, then it would be removed off calendars, and there would be communication between the DHH FRC and the DHH agencies in King County letting us know the family didn't want to attend.
Liz, here, a few questions in the chat. Another one is, the FRC schedules the evaluation. Do they check schedules of providers who would be doing the evaluation?
This is Norma speaking. I think Wendy just jumped in. I'll let you answer, Wendy.
This is Wendy. And these questions are fantastic. And we will actually get to that question about what happens with scheduling the evaluation or assessment in just a few minutes.
Please, here we had a question about what if the parents are also deaf or hard of hearing? Cassie answered, ask the family how they'd like to communicate. Most DHH adults are great at sharing their preferred form of communication. And then we have a couple questions about welcome sessions. Will that get addressed later, or should we answer them here?
This is Norma speaking. Yes, we have a whole section on the welcome session and some practice, a practice activity.
Okay. If it's okay, Jennifer and Mark will keep moving, and hopefully your question will get answered. Otherwise, feel free to ask again.
All right, so we're at the first step of the process. What does it look like at intake when a DHH agency has not yet been chosen? And so you'll see this is a family has not yet chosen a DHH agency. The background on the slide is yellow to match the yellow arrow in the process overview where a family has not yet chosen a DHH agency. And so the role of the DHH FRC here is to provide neutral, unbiased information to families, letting them know they have 3 options of DHH agencies to choose from. The DHH FRC does not need to share information about programs. The agencies will share with families directly at the welcome session. The DHH FRC's main goal at this point in the ESIT DHH timeline is to support a family while they are making a choice and keep them moving through the ESIT process without delays. And they can share next steps if a family has not chosen a DHH agency after the welcome session. The DHH FRC would schedule the eval or assessment and let the DHH agencies know where the family is at with their decision. And for the DHH agencies at this point in time, if a family has not yet chosen a DHH agency, the DHH agency's role is to attend that welcome session and share information about their programs with families and answer any questions that the family might have. And I think I see a hand up. Melinda?
Hi, Melinda here. Kind of backing up a little bit as I'm like going through the process in my mind. When we are scheduling an evaluation, we have encountered in the past difficulty scheduling certain languages at time. So if there's a need to double, book two different kinds of interpreters, will there be exceptions allowed for timeliness? I'm imagining a scenario like if we have an ASL interpreter and then we have an let's see, like a GA interpreter request for a family, and having like it might be very easy to fill the ASL, but it might be very challenging to fill in the GA interpreter as our team is getting together to be a part of this evaluation. Like, how would we communicate or collaborate with that up through whatever King County, or is that an exception allowed? Sorry.
This is Norma. I'm just asking a clarifying question. Did you mean for the welcome session, or I think I heard you say in scheduling an assessment or an evaluation?
Yeah, I'm thinking of an evaluation scenario. And or IFSP even.
This is Wendy. Also a great question. And we will be talking about and asking you to think about how you'll approach scheduling interpreters for different things in just a few minutes. I think that there's so many different pieces of this and we can't answer them all at once. So if you can help us recognize that we're going through a process with that has a lot of different parts, and we'll get to different things. These are such good questions. I don't want you to think that we're not thinking about you, but let's see if we can go on a little bit more and if your questions get answered.
All right. Again, back at intake, this is Norma speaking, by the way. What does it look like at intake when a DHH agency has been chosen? So the background on this slide is green to match the arrow in the ESIT DHH process. The goal or the ideal that we're trying to get to, a DHH agency being chosen and a DHH provider being included in every step of the ESIT DHH process. So here, when a family has chosen a DHH agency at or after referral at intake, the role of the DHH FRC in this scenario is to support the family through the next steps of the ESIT DHH process and include the DHH provider as a full team member every step of the way. They would offer the welcome session to the family to learn more about the 3 DHH agencies and their programs. If the family has made their choice, support the family through the next steps of the process. And at this point in time, for the DHH agencies, if a family chooses to attend a welcome session to learn more about the 3 DHH agencies, the agencies attend and answer any questions the family might have. The DHH agency connects with the family to move forward in the ESIT DHH process, the chosen DHH agency, and is included as a full team member in every step of the process. And as we mentioned, the full service agency would be responsible for scheduling the eval assessment. So we're going to move into a small group practice. So here we're going to break you out into groups of 3. When you're in your breakout room, you can do quick introductions, your name, pronouns, agency role, so everyone knows who everyone in the space is. And you'll take turns being 3 different roles. A caregiver, so you'll choose one family to represent in the scenario. A DHH FRC, who explains options to caregiver and supports their choice. And an observer who notes what worked well and what you would improve in that process. So this is an opportunity for practice. You'll see this table here, what to share with a family when you're explaining the 3 DHH agency options. The family has a choice of DHH agency. There are 3 DHH agency options. You can share the video, the flyer, which includes information on Guide by Your Side, and share information on the welcome session. And then in the what not to share column here, this is things to avoid in that initial communication with the family explaining the DHH agency options. So you would not want to share program-specific information. That will be up to the DHH agencies to share about their specific programs. You'd also not want to share personal opinions that may influence a family's choice or personal experience with programs or approaches. So in a moment here, we will break you out into groups, and I'm just going to copy and paste the Jamboard into the chat so everybody has that. The first slide goes over the same instructions that I just shared. So you have those in front of you. And then on slide 2, you'll see 2 family scenarios. You can choose when you're the caregiver, choose one family to represent. And then there's a sample starting script just to get you started and going, talking about the 3 DHH options with families. And this what to share and what not to share is in the Jamboard as well. So first, I'll just make sure that everyone's able to access it. I see some thumbs up. Great. And I think, Wendy, you were doing the breakout rooms.
It's Liz. I see Robin and Kim can't access it. Hopefully you will be in a room with folks who can, and whoever can, please share your screen. If you're all 2 of you are in a room together with someone else who also can't access it, okay, hopefully Michelle can't, Kim and Robin are not in a room together, but we'll jump into the rooms to make sure you have access.
Okay.
It's Liz. I see a question from Eileen. I think you should be able to screen share in a breakout group.
And this is Norma. Just a quick accessibility check. The interpreters and I believe the King County staff will be staying in the main room. If you are utilizing the interpreters, you can stay in the main room with us. Just don't click the button that says join a room. The rooms are randomly generated, but the interpreters will be staying in the main room.
Norma, this is Liz. I see 1 or 2 groups where there's only 2 people. Would you want me to join into one of those groups?
Hi, Liz. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. I will join. I'm going to join room 7.
Abby, I did have you join the room where the person needs a captioner. Are you able to do that?
Oh, okay. I can try. Let's see.
Okay. Norma, how are you feeling about keeping moving versus all the questions?
I think it's been fine to hear the questions just in case it's something that isn't something that we will be that I know that we'll be addressing. But I've liked the cadence of some of those thematic questions that we know that we'll get to and we'll have time for practice.
One question that got asked that you may need to go back to is, will multiple families be in the same welcome session? But you can save that for the welcome session slide, I think. And will they interact with each other?
Yeah, I copied it to put in that section.
Right. Angie, do you have any suggestions or thoughts as we're working our way through this, as somebody this is new to also?
This is incredible efforts you're doing. I just have a question because I thought I heard you say if a family has already made a choice, the welcome session is not needed. But then this green slide is DHH agencies chosen. Or does this mean that family is choosing this DHH option through this process? Is that what it means?
Yeah.
I was a little confused.
Yeah, so if a family has not yet chosen a DHH agency when they first meet with the DHH FRC, then they would the DHH FRC would offer the welcome session, let them know like, hey, this is scheduled. You can meet with the 3 DHH agencies and they'll like walk you through the process. They'll explain their program. They'll answer any questions. If a family comes to the DHH FRC and says, well, I already have an agency selected, the DHH FRC would still offer the welcome session so that they can hear from the other 2 agencies about their approach, their program, et cetera. And if the family declines and says, no, I already, like, this is my choice and I don't want to go to the welcome session, then we would cancel that scheduled welcome session for that week or the timeline that the family is in contact with the FRC. So we would still offer it, but not force the family to attend it.
Okay. Thank you.
There might be another family who would attend that welcome session anyway.
The part that you have about what not to share, I just wonder, was that based on the 3 agencies' cautions or request to refrain from sharing about program specific information? Like, because I'm just wondering like how well our FRC, DHH FRC, maybe how she may be like providing some information about program specific information that she that she has come to know, that may. So I was just wondering how those things got identified, what not to share.
Yeah, I think the intent is, so we know that the DHH FRCs, like they'll have kind of an array of experience or expertise, and going from the lens of like assuming no expertise, we want the DHH FRC to be a conduit of communication and that like liaison for support for the family, but not the DHH expert. So they would want to connect the family with the DHH agency for any of those questions that they have around their child's needs, and also wanting to mitigate any, because we all have bias, wanting to mitigate any potential bias. So not sharing any personal opinion or personal experience with, I see that Tara asked for help. I'm gonna go jump into that group.
Sure.
Oh. Norma.
Hello there.
Yeah. Tara's can't hear.
Welcome back. Make sure that we have everyone here. And Liz, if we can get the PowerPoint back up, please. Great. So you had a little bit of an opportunity to practice what it might look like to introduce the 3 DHH options to a family, and go through the scenarios that we had there for whether a family has chosen a DHH agency or if they have not yet chosen a DHH agency, and how to introduce them to their options. And we are going to move into our next policy. So our second policy here, communication and collaboration. We talked about this a little bit last time, so building on it a bit more. Our welcome session largely centered around community building, communication and collaboration. I see some questions in the chat.
This is Liz. Will we have, I know we want to get through as many of these as possible, but will there be a chance, this is my question, will there be a chance to debrief from what we just discussed in small groups? And then a few questions in the chat. How do we explain why there are 3 agencies without going into detail? Oh, and Anna said, where do we share our feedback from the breakout room?
Yeah, these are great questions. So toward the end of our time together, we'll have kind of open question time, depending on how much time we have left. But we'll also have a survey link for you to ask any other questions that you might have and to share feedback with us. Feedback from your breakout room. Anna, could you say a little bit more about that? Did you mean feedback to give to the whole group or to me?
Yes. Oh, this is Anna Dodd. More just questions that we had and ideas that we came up with during the conversation. I'll be honest, we didn't get too far in the practice because we had a lot of questions that popped up that we were answering together and generating ideas. And so I'm curious if there can be a place where we can either drop our feedback or ideas, or it sounds like at the end we'll have an opportunity. I wonder though, if there'll be a lot more questions than just our group. I think we have a lot of questions. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we have another, a few more small group practice opportunities. If folks are taking notes, if you want to send those to me, that would be great. But we'll also have a little bit of time to share a bit of reflection on these small group practices.
I have an idea. This is Wendy. What if, since you just left that meeting you take a moment and write whatever questions you have in the chat, whatever suggestions to improve the draft script in the chat. We'll just take a minute or two and write it all there, and we'll have all your thinking down.
This is Norma. That's a great idea, Wendy. So if everyone could write in the chat any ideas that that you had, or thoughts or reflections. I see there is a comment that this seemed rushed. That kind of makes me a little bit happy. The amount of time that we had in the breakout rooms felt like a big chunk of time, and I love how dedicated everybody is to ensuring that we get a significant amount of practice, get questions answered, and that there's enthusiasm for shared learning and for collaborating together. Just as a reminder, we do have one more session where we'll have a bit more time to do more practice and reflect on what we've gone over today, and all of those questions that you're generating and ideas will help build for next time as well. And just another plug-in for our community of practice. All of this will be building on this continuously. So this is not the first time that you'll be seeing this information and then you're off to your own devices. We'll be collaborating on this a lot. So all those ideas, questions, reflections, super helpful to help us keep scaffolding our learning. So while everyone is sharing their thoughts in the chat, I'll also compile these thoughts and share them out to the whole group with the meeting materials, the recording, and the slideshow. So while everyone's doing that, I will go ahead and move on to communication and collaboration. So we talked about this one last time. Timely communication, we're ensuring that we're sticking to the ESIT timelines and moving families through the process without delays. So best practice is to have an out of office message with backup contacts so team members across agencies can stay in the loop and connect with someone else if needed, if you're going to be unavailable. And I've already seen folks doing this. So just keeping timely communication in mind. Inclusive and regular teaming is also super important. Teams serving DHH children and their families need to include all other team members in scheduling, planning, reflection, discussion of best practices, and quality improvements for serving the family via email and meetings. And accessibility for all team members is a priority here. And I'm not going to go too into detail and read this slide. Again, you'll have the slide deck available to you after our training today. But this was something that various work groups put together, what communication and collaboration looks like and means in this space. So we're wanting to center family voices, keep an open mind, create community, respect all voices, and have patience, acknowledging that change is difficult. This is new for all of us. So having grace with one another will be key. All right, and now we are going to do a 2-minute self-reflection. So I would like you to get out a piece of paper or anything wherever you want to write some thoughts down. This is for you. On a piece of paper or wherever it is that you're taking notes, write down one strength you bring to collaborative communication and also one area you'd like to get stronger. So we'll just give folks about 2 minutes to reflect on that. And if you have any other reflections from the small group activity that we just did, please share them in the chat. So 2 minutes for the self-reflection.
This is Liz. Norma, can you repeat the prompt? One area to get stronger, and what was the other thing?
Yes, I will also put it in the chat. So on a piece of paper, write down one strength you bring to collaborative communication, and also write down one area you'd like to get stronger in for collaborative communication. And while folks are doing that, I'll explain the slide a little bit. These are just quotes that I pulled from our last meeting, the Jamboard, where you all contributed to what collaborative communication and a healthy, thriving community looks like to you. So we'll give folks about 1 more minute and then I will turn it over to Wendy.
And while you're writing, if you finish, I want to invite you to get up and wiggle or stretch or move, run to the bathroom real quickly, and we'll start again in about 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, if you haven't stretched yet, 1 more stretch, 1 more wiggle. We are coming back together. This is Wendy. To talk about interpreters and accessibility. And Liz, if you can move forward to the next slide. So first about interpreters. And we will fix this slide because it says DHH FRCs are responsible for ensuring the family's home language is supported by scheduling and arranging interpreters for every step of the IFSP process. That is true. And we'll add in a bullet here that the DHH FRC will need to let Norma know if an interpreter is needed for the welcome session. So you won't need to schedule it as a DHH FRC for that, but for the welcome session, but you'll need to let Norma know. But you'll be responsible for using your agency's processes for scheduling and arranging interpreters for all of the IFSP steps process. And then direct service providers are responsible for arranging interpreters for the services that they provide. We want to acknowledge that there are also interpreters needed at times for accessibility. When a DHH child is referred, the DHH FRC will notify all 3 agencies of the scheduled evaluation, assessment, and IFSP meetings, even before they've chosen one of the agencies, so that if a staff member needs interpreters to ensure accessibility, those can be scheduled well in advance. When caregivers or team members need interpreters for accessibility, meetings will be scheduled at least 2 weeks in advance. Deaf and hard of hearing agencies are responsible for scheduling interpreters to ensure accessibility to ESIT activities for their staff members whenever needed. And we don't have the full rule on this one, but we are working on King County covering a percentage of staff interpreter costs to ensure that ESIT staff have accessibility to all ESIT activities. We'll be working that out over the next little while. So, with that, I'm going to move it to the next slide. And ask you to reflect and put some things together. We have several different scenarios below. And for yourself, you can pick one of those scenarios where the caregiver speaks English and Somali and a Somali interpreter is needed, or the caregiver uses American Sign Language and an ASL interpreter is needed, or a provider uses American Sign Language and an ASL interpreter is needed. So what I want you to do is think about, from your role, whether you're a deaf, hard of hearing provider or a deaf, hard of hearing family resource coordinator or another role, what steps will you take in planning for that family? So again, this is what you would do with any family you're serving from a full service agency, is schedule the interpreters for all the items and let Norma know if an interpreter is needed for a welcome session. Okay. I think we'll move on to the next slide.
Liz here.
Anna, thank you for your question. No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
This is Liz. I just wanted to see if the slide was showing, and yeah, also ask Anna's question, which is, do full service agencies have eval teams for initial evaluation and assessment? How do full service teams work?
We're not probably, this is Wendy again, sorry. We're not probably going to get to the evaluation and assessment because there's not a huge amount of time, but each agency, each full service agency has their own approach to scheduling, evaluation, and assessment. So if the family has chosen the DHH agency before, if they come in knowing which agency they want to work with, the assessment would be scheduled in coordination with the DHH agency. And we will, thanks. Yeah, we will go over it when we have more time for evaluation and assessment. Thanks, Norma. Earlier, there was a question about the roles of DHH point person and DHH FRCs. And basically, we're asking every agency to have a DHH point person. So every agency has somebody who's participating in all training requirements, DHH training requirements, and every agency has someone who's participating in the ongoing community of practice. The DHH point people will also support all the DHH FRCs and ensure that DHH policies and procedures are in. They'll also be the point person for all the collaborators. I think we should add Department of Health to that list for DHH point person based on Melinda's and earlier question. So we'll add that in. The DHH FRCs need to participate in all the training requirements for DHH. Also, they're encouraged to join the community of practice. They will support the family throughout the entire process. They'll be responsible for implementing the DHH policies and procedures, and also building collaborative relationships with all the providers on their teams. And yes, Betsy, the community of practice will be an opportunity to learn more about DHH community, and also more specific problem solving, addressing issues that come up, helping us improve the system, any variety of things. And all of us in the community are responsible for addressing and responding to concerns as they arise. And then that leads right to the next slide, which is about the DHH community of practice. They are almost all second Wednesdays from 3 to 4:30.
This is Norma speaking. So just taking a look at time, we will go over the pilot welcome session information. But starting at our next session, we will have some small group practice time to practice the welcome session together. Oh, there was a question to go back to the community of practice calendar. And just as a reminder, this will be shared with everybody, and I'll send the slide deck. You'll also have a few of the slides that we'll be going over next week as part of that. So I'll just, oh, okay, we've moved on. The pilot welcome session. This is kind of just an intro to this piece, and we'll pick it up again more in depth next week, and we'll have some opportunity to do another small group practice time where, very similar to what we did earlier, we can take turns role playing how to message this to families. So this pilot welcome session with all 3 DHH agencies. It'll be a joint virtual session with all 3 DHH agencies, which will be scheduled weekly to support families in understanding their choices, provide information, answer questions. And as Wendy mentioned earlier, if a family needs an interpreter for these welcome sessions, a DHH FRC would need to reach out to me right away so that the county can schedule that interpreter and get that going. And because there were some questions around this earlier, I wanted to make sure that we covered those today. So one question that came up in the chat earlier, will multiple families be in the same welcome session? So we will be meeting with the 3 DHH agencies, the county and the agencies to go over the logistics of how this is going to work. This is brand new for everybody. So we're still shaping this and we'll be planning the logistics of how it's going to work, try to do a rehearsal to see how it will work in the virtual space and get all of those sort of glitches and things that can come up out of the way before we offer it to families. So the question around, will multiple families be in the same welcome session? The idea is that potentially if there were multiple families who were being referred to ESIT, DHH, they might attend the welcome session together, but then we would be able to do breakout rooms for privacy so that the family can meet with the DHH agencies individually and get their questions and answered privately. So there was also a question around, would the welcome sessions be recorded if families are unable to attend them at the scheduled time? And because of privacy, no, the welcome sessions would not be recorded. A family would be able to attend one that is scheduled on a weekly basis if possible. If they're not able to join the scheduled one, then that might be something that we try to coordinate with all the 3 DHH agencies and the FRC to see if we can provide an alternative for the family. There's also the video, the flyer, which doesn't take the place of the welcome session, but other materials and information that can be shared with the family. And then there was another question around, would families interact with each other in this welcome session? And I think because this is a pilot and so we're still shaping it, that question is great. It's, I think maybe in terms of community building and providing a space for families to interact with each other might be a great idea. Wendy, is there anything that I might have missed in answering those questions?
Liz
This
here.
is Wendy.
Oh. Go ahead, Wendy.
I'm also seeing Cassie's questions. How frequently are the welcome sessions? They'll be scheduled probably weekly. If there are no new referrals that need a welcome session, it could be canceled. But they'll be scheduled ideally like a morning time one week, an afternoon time the next week. And it could be specially scheduled if truly needed for a family that doesn't have flexibility. Another question from earlier is, if a family doesn't want to attend a welcome session, but wants an individual session with each family, with each agency, like we have done in the past, the challenge of scheduling all of those, and it creates even more meeting times. But if agencies want, I mean, there may be a way to schedule individually if that needs to happen. See. Yes, the privacy, they can meet in breakout rooms with just one agency at a time, so the other families wouldn't be in that breakout room. Trying to think if there are other things. The number of referrals that we get and the pace at which we get them, it seems like most of the time it will be a single family in a welcome session. And we could also arrange for anybody who needs to be alone in a welcome session. It could be to the week after. There's a variety of things. But as Norma already said, there's a lot of planning going into it. So your questions and ideas, we were going to have a brainstorm about the welcome sessions in this meeting, but I think that we are out of time for that. So thanks for writing your brainstorms into the chat and your questions. It fits right in with the activity that we were going to do next.
This is Norma. So since we have 5 minutes left of our time here, I want to honor everyone's time. Liz, if you could jump to the questions slide, please. As Wendy mentioned, the small group practice that we had for the welcome session was a brainstorm. You all have access to the Jamboard. So if you wanted to get a jump on this and jot down your ideas or your thoughts and questions that you have for the welcome sessions, you can access the Jamboard and jot those down in, they are slides 3 through 5 that have some prompts around brainstorming for the welcome session. But we will pick up right where we left off next week, talking more about the welcome session. I see there's a question. Can you explain what the Jamboard is? So Liz is sharing her screen, showing us the Jamboard. This is an interactive space where you can put stickies in here and leave notes, or on the left-hand side of the screen here, Liz is showing you this is where the sticky note is. On that left-hand side, there's also a little box with a T in it. That's a text box. You can put a text box into this slide as well. And I'll put the link in the chat one more time. And again, when I send this, the follow-up to everyone, I'll try to get that out later this evening so that you have access to the slide deck and the Jamboard right away. It might take a little bit to get it posted to the website where last week's is, but I'll send this via email.
Liz here, and I admit I was doing things and not listening as well, Norma. So apologies if you said this. Are you asking people to put their feedback on the welcome session as sort of like an in-between homework, but before the next session? Okay.
Yeah. This is Norma. Yeah, I think that might be the best use of our time, so that you can get your questions, your reflections on the welcome session onto the Jamboard. I can also add another slide in there to keep track of questions that we want to make sure that we have answered for next week. And we do have a link to a survey that will be a really good place to capture your questions as well. So I will put that in the chat. So we have just a couple of minutes here. You've already asked a lot of really great questions along the way. The last few minutes of our time together, we're going to be kind of a question space, but this form here that I just put into the chat, if you have any questions that still haven't been answered or that you're wanting to be answered next week, please fill out this survey form. We'll use the last couple of minutes of our time together for you to fill out the survey form and jot all your questions and thoughts down in there. And as we leave today, if you could also put in the chat one thing you learned today and one thing you're hoping to learn next time. me double check that forms link. I see is Kim, is it the Jamboard that's not working, or is it the Microsoft Forms? Jamboard. So I will double check on Jamboard and see any permission issues that might be happening there and send that via email as well. But I want to make sure that everyone is able to access the survey link where you can also where we can capture your questions. And we are at time. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending and for all your great questions. Again, we will start off next week at the welcome session and move forward through the rest of the policies. And we'll also have time for more questions, practice, and reflection, both at that next training. We do also have one June 1st, where we'll go over some logistics around the interagency agreement forms, the billing and developmental disabilities agency forms as well. So we still have some time together in the next couple weeks, and we do have the community of practice meetings that we'll meet monthly. Thank you all so much for joining us.